Hey guys, welcome back. In that last video we programmed the PCM. We fired it up and shut it off right away. Now that we know it runs, I'm going to go ahead and fill up the transmission and the radiator. I did make sure it had oil in it before I fired it up the first time. I still don't have the correct dipstick for this oil pan, but I just put 6 quarts in like the service manual called for, and I may remark this dipstick or we may get the correct one, I'm not sure. But let's go ahead and put some fluid in the transmission and the radiator, and then we can run it for a little bit longer and we can check those two systems for leaks. The transmission pan had been drained from the junkyard. The drain plug was stripped out. The socket would no longer fit on there, so I had to chisel that off. I put a new plug in. Only a little bit of transmission fluid came out, and it's been sitting for a while and draining that system down. So I'm going to have to put quite a bit in there. I'm going to start with 5 quarts and see where we're at. That's at least enough to get us started. It'll pump some through, and then we can adjust the level for there. If for some reason I end up a little too high, this does have a drain plug. I can drain some out. The cooling system, we have all the hoses hooked up. I need to tighten the clamps on the heater hoses before I fill it. But I'm going to use a vacuum filler to fill this system. It makes it a little easier for me. The LS platform is not too bad because the thermostat is in the lower hose. So it's very easy to fill the entire system. You don't have to unhook hoses to bleed anything. You just can continue to fill the radiator and then run it, and the air will kind of bleed itself out. But since I have a vacuum filler, that's how I'm going to do it. You can get some fairly inexpensive ones on the internet. The one I have is a snap-on one. It costs a little bit more, but I use this thing at least 4 times a week, so I need it to really hold up. The plastic ones just aren't going to cut it for that kind of abuse. So let me add some fluid to this thing, and then we'll fire it up and let it run for a while. We keep our training fluid in bulk, so I use these oil-safe cans, and I just go and fill this up. I got about 5 quarts here. I do have one with the funnel, but it's on my oil jug. I have separate ones for transmission and oil. That's going to take a while to drain, so I'm going to go ahead and tighten up my heater hoses while I'm waiting. Now, I haven't talked about the air intake system because it's not complete. I have it temporarily set up. I don't know if this is going to be the final location of everything. I just have a straight 3.5 inch pipe. I have a 4 inch to 3.5 90-degree reducer, a 3.5 to 3.5 coupler here, and then I still need to source a air filter with a 4 inch flange, and it'll bolt right onto that mass airflow sensor. Since these mass airflow sensors have that honeycomb in the front, I don't really need to have a straightaway section in front of that. I can put it right up against the filter. So I have not trimmed my mass airflow wire either, because I don't know exactly where that's going to end up. I think it's going to end up right in here, but I may shorten or lengthen this depending on how long the filter is. Now this deal here is my vacuum filler. What it does is air pressure goes through here. It has some sort of deal in here. It creates a vacuum on this other port, and I can pull a vacuum down on the cooling system. And once it takes all the air out of the cooling system, I stick this other hose into a jug of coolant, and that vacuum will suck the coolant into all the nooks and crannies in the engine. This is really handy for vehicles that get airlocks. As long as you drain the cooling system first and then run this, it'll pull a vacuum everywhere, and when you fill it up, coolant will get into all those high spots where normally the air gets trapped. And we'll find out pretty quick if I have any leaks in the system, because if I have major leaks, then it won't pull a vacuum. If I have minor leaks, when I pull a vacuum and then shut the air off, it'll bleed back down. If you're wondering why it didn't get into the green, it's because I live at 5,000 feet of elevation. Our standard vacuum is less than sea level. So it still has a good vacuum on it, and we won't have any problems filling it. I just can never get it into the green. So now I will take a jug of coolant. This is a 50-50 mix. I will stick this hose that has a little screen on it to the bottom of the bucket, open up that port, and I'll let this go ahead and fill up. I'm actually going to shut it off before it gets all the way down to zero, because I don't have an overflow on this reservoir, on this radiator, so I'm going to leave the level down just a little bit for now. I don't know how big this radiator is. This is 2.5 gallons that I filled up, but that may not be enough because of this radiator is a fairly good sized radiator. I think that'll get us pretty close, especially since I wanted to leave it a little bit low anyways. And in case you want the snap-on one, the part number is SVTSRAD262U. So as you can see, there is coolant in there. It's about an inch from the top of the tank here, so that should give us enough room to not be puking a bunch of coolant out that port. Now I also don't have a belt on it, so I won't be able to run it for too long. We'll be able to run it for a little bit. We don't want it to overheat, but I haven't put the belt on because I don't have the power steering system hooked up, because I'm still waiting on a part to put that gear in place. Let me move you guys to the back so you can hear the exhaust a little bit. I don't have a great microphone on this camera right now, but you'll get the idea. Now, high-pitched whistling is just the big throttle body, the idle air control motor, kind of the air hissing through there. Let me move you guys back there, and you can take a listen to that dual exhaust. Now, this exhaust is the quieter version. I have turbo mufflers on here. They had a version, I got this from Schaefer Restorations, I believe. They have a version of this exhaust that runs Flowmasters or a similar muffler, but we didn't want real loud, so let me rev it up a few times so you guys can hear that. I gotta open up all the doors to air it out a little bit. The guys are already gonna be upset because tomorrow is, or I guess last night was daylight savings, so tomorrow they have to technically be here at work an hour earlier than normal. I'm not sure why it's running a little rich. It probably just hasn't learned all of the fuel management stuff. That other intake manifold that we have on here, it may change the fuel mapping a little bit. It might take a little while to learn that. Hopefully we don't have to tune it. I am going to run the mass airflow sensor. I considered running without the mass airflow and changing it to run on map sensor only. But since I don't have a dyno to tune it, we're going to leave the mass airflow on the system for now. Okay, the engine runs. Sounds pretty good. At first the engine was going really fast. I had to turn the throttle plates down a little bit. I wanted to make sure I didn't have any vacuum leaks. Put my hand over the throttle body. It tried to kill it. So I just turned the blade down. My TPS was around 0.5 volt, which I thought was normal. The final number is down to like 0.25 volts, which seems a little low, but it still recognizes the zero position every time you cycle the key, so it shouldn't be an issue. I may have to adjust that a little bit once we get everything put together, all the loads on it, and get it up and running. The idle air control motor is supposed to compensate for that, but just in case, we may have to revisit that in another video. Ended up with a coolant leak. The heater hose clamp, one of them wasn't quite tight enough. It seemed tight. I got about another turn out of the clamp, quit leaking. So that's good. I guess we'll find out if that heater core is going to hold up to the higher pressure, operating pressure of this system and the higher flow of this water pump. Hopefully it holds up. I don't really want to have to do a heater core in this as well. If we do need a heater core, it may get bypassed for now until we can get the heater core done. I had to add a couple more quarts of fluid to the transmission. After I did that, I didn't check the final level, but with the 5 quarts, I was right at the bottom of the dipstick. I added a couple more quarts. Didn't check it since. I don't want to run it through the gears because I don't have brakes. So the level really doesn't matter all that much at this point. I just wanted to make sure I had enough fluid in there to run it. I don't see any transmission leaks anywhere. Cooler line fittings at the transmission all the way up to the radiator. None of those custom hoses we built leak. The fuel system, didn't see any leaks. The power steering's leaking out of the pump, but every time I push it in, it leaks out of the pump. I don't have lines hooked up to that because I don't have the gearbox on yet. Hopefully we'll have all the parts for the power steering conversion here shortly, and I can get that taken care of once that's on, put the brakes on, bleed it out, get the drive shaft all situated, we can go drive it. Questions, comments, put those down below. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe and click the bell. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.